Good morning, wrestling fans, and welcome to the December 10th edition of WrestleTalkShow. I'm your host, Joshua Zimmerman, here to bring you the latest and greatest professional wrestling news, bits, rumors, anything and everything wrestling. We cover it. Been a couple days, a lot of news, a lot of CM Punk stuff that I've been posting, but we're actually going to culminate all that on today's show. So, without further ado, let's dive into the start of things, shall we? First off, we want to remind you to follow us at Facebook.com/CWE Company, Facebook.com/WrestleTalkShow, on Twitter at CWE Company, to our business associates and affiliates, LinkedIn.com, using the keywords Joshua Zimmerman, Continental Wrestling Entertainment, WrestleTalkShow, doesn't really matter, YouTube.com/CWE Company. This YouTube channel, even though CWE Company, like we keep saying, has the archive, more than three years worth of material, you're sure to find something that you like. Remember to follow our friends at smartwrestlingfan.com. Most likely it's 8:15 on the East Coast, so probably late last night they posted last night's show covering all things wrestling. PWTorch.com, James Caldwell and Wade Keller cover all things wrestling. They do a daily podcast. Mondays, the hour leading into Raw, and Tuesdays through Friday, 5 to 6 p.m. Without further ado, update on WWE signing top independent talent. As noted last week, there were a lot of rumors at a Preston City wrestling event in the UK that top indie star and new PCW champion Nation had signed with WWE and would be headed to the Performance Center in a few months. Nation has been on WWE's radar for some time after impressing at a tryout. WWN Live's Gabe Sapolsky stated this week that Nation is still under contract with WWN and is not signed with WWE yet. Sapolsky is known to encourage his talents to sign with WWE when they're offered deals. He said he wants Nation to sign with WWE as well. Even though we've all seen it, this run sheet was created on the 6th. You all know who won, but the nominees for the Slammy Awards were Faction of the Year. You had a choice between the Authority, the Wyatt family, the Shield, and the Rosebuds. Couple of the Year, Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella, Triple H and Stephanie, Jimmy Uso and Naomi, Tyson Kidd and Natalya. Animal of the Year, Gator Hornswoggle, El Torito, and the Bunny and Grumpy Cat. Best Twitter handle, social media champion, Dolph Ziggler, John Cena, Ryback, Zack Ryder, the Bella Twins, and Paige. Rivalry of the Year, The Shield versus Evolution, Daniel Bryan versus The Authority, Brock Lesnar versus John Cena, Rusev versus the USA, Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose. Raw Guest Host of the Year, Larry the Cable Guy, Kevin Hart, Jerry Springer, Hugh Jackman, Betty White. Alex Shelley talks why he didn't renew his TNA contract and who has the best product. Scott Fishman of the Miami Herald has has an interview with Alex Shelley, who was promoting Final Battle for ROH, their pay-per-view that happened over the weekend. At the show, he teamed up with Casita to face Kyle O'Reilly and for the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championship. Below are here are some of the highlights. When asked why he didn't renew in 2012 with TNA, quote, "It's definitely a risk if you're passing up guaranteed money, and I was, to move somewhere else. That's scary on its own. I was at a point in my life where I was finishing up college in a few months. I had seen so many management changes in TNA. I had worked for New Japan previously. I was brought in 2009 as a special guest. I knew a lot of the guys from TNA, or meeting them randomly on independent shows. I met Okada in 2006 in Toronto. That definitely helped influence my decision, knowing a lot of people there and what I was getting into. Facing Red Dragon at New Japan Pro Wrestling's Wrestle Kingdom on January 4th from the Tokyo Dome. It's interesting because I know they have the number one product in the world. I'm not saying that because I'm part of the company or contributing to it. It just is. You can't argue that. Pound for pound, their roster is the best pro wrestlers collected currently. They have been around for a while and probably will too. So, in a sense, the people who order the show are going to be blown away by the quality of matches and presentation as well. The Tokyo Dome show is New Japan's WrestleMania in a sense that everybody has cool costumes, flashy entrances, and the setup looks great. The momentum is on the company side. Business has picked up the last couple of years. It will be a slow burn, and as far as accumulation of fans, word of mouth has been strong with fans. TNA Knockout no longer with the company. TNA Knockout Santana, otherwise known as Brittany Garrett's TNA contract ended in late November, and she has not signed a new contract. She appeared at Shine's wrestling event where she defeated former partner Amber O'Neal on iPay-per-view. Santana was part of the last Impact TV tapings held for Spike TV before they moved to Destination America. And can I stop right there for a second? I watch a lot of Destination America, so let me just get this rant out of the way. Let's say from 1 to 7 o'clock at night Eastern time, Destination America does reality TV, and I guess in a sense it fits, but what the channel really reminds me of is it's the channel to go to when you want to watch the spooky happenings in Pennsylvania, if you're me, and just spooky in general. And considering what we're going to say later on about Carter, I can understand how they jumped to the first network that offered them a deal, and Destination America looks like they're actually going to spend money on the advertising, unlike Spike, who was hit or miss, only because, and I say it again, Dixie Carter screwed Dixie Carter, to take a Bret Hart theme of things. Just to culminate everything that she said over the last week, she's claimed that Vince McMahon has thwarted TNA's growth. Well, Dixie, and you know I don't like you professionally, Dixie Carter screwed Dixie Carter, because when TNA first broke, you had a rivaling number 2 company. Now, you have the laughingstock of the wrestling world, where WWE, the wrestling giant, the monopoly in professional wrestling, doesn't even think you're competition. So, but in a sense, playing devil's advocate, she does make a point, because they're all after the same demographic, the same international ticket sales, the buy rates. They're all going after that same piece of the pie. And where I'll give in her defense, even though I'll argue that she's had years to do this, and if anything has gone from greatness to not even second best, is they molded their own champion. They were the first company to take AJ Styles and turn him into the TNA World Heavyweight Champion from the start of his career at TNA. Okay? And then to side with Samoa Joe, phasing AJ out. And now you wonder why AJ Styles is back on the independent scene and doing way better, seeing way better paydays than he ever did in TNA. Best of luck to AJ Styles, by the way. But Dixie, stop blaming other people for your failed business decisions. It's not going to work. The smart wrestling fan, pardon the pun if you will see past the lies, because you had a product, you were handed a product where you created superstars from your own roster, and then you tried to compete. And when you tried to go back-to-back with the WWE, you lost. You brought in Hulk Hogan and Sting, you still lost. You brought in Eric Bischoff, guess what? You lost. Outside of that, you paid them extreme contracts for what? For what? Nothing. Moving along, we'll get back into this rant in a minute, because we all know I love to bash Dixie Carter. Hashtag I hate Dixie Carter. Santana will be appearing at next Saturday's, I believe, in wrestling event in Orlando, and more announcements will be made on her Facebook and Twitter. You can reach her at Twitter at BrittanyTNA, and she's taking independent bookings and modeling and commercial gigs. Those interested to pay her fee can reach her booking agent at BrittanyTNA@gmail.com. As we all know, and I'd be regress to not bring this up, CM Punk had talks with Dana White this weekend. We now know that those talks landed a deal, a confirmed deal, 100% new career for Punk, starting in 2015. And we'll just skip that because it's kind of past tense. To quote Dana White before he actually talked to Punk, you never know if he can fight until you get in there. I didn't know if Brock could fight. I thought Brock was crazy for coming over here, but the difference with Brock Lesnar is Brock is a world-class wrestler. I don't know. We'll see. He's not a guy that we would do what we did with Brock. We threw Brock right to the wolves. Brock started fighting all the top heavyweights in the world because of his wrestling background. CM Punk, we would try to bring him in just like any regular fighter, and he would fight a guy with a similar record to his, which is 0-0. Jey Uso responds to Vince McMahon's comments, says WWE has a good crew. Jey Uso recently joined Chuck Carroll on the Turnbuckle Weekly to promote WWE TLC. Uso responded to Vince McMahon's comment on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast about the current locker room lacking ambition. Quote, I know he wouldn't say something without any meaning behind it. I feel like he was trying to light a fire under the locker room. He wants guys to go out there and grab the brass ring, step out on a limb, and go out there and get it. I feel like some of the guys, including myself, when me and my brother first came in, is kind of like walking on eggshells. We don't want to mess up because we're new guys. We're young. We don't know what to do as far as ambition. I feel like we have a good crew. It's going to take time. It's going to take some years to get used to this thing. But as soon as we get our feet deep in the ground and our claws deep in the dirt, we're going to be okay. I love my group of guys. I love my locker room. If you look at it, we have some great talent in there. It is going to take time. It's going to take some time. That's all I can say about it. Dixie Carter, like I said before, claims that Vince McMahon tried to thwart TNA's growth, claims that she wouldn't sign CM Punk. In the article in which I posted on WrestleTalkShow's Facebook page directly, she said that it had to be hard, more or less in a nutshell, it had to be hard for CM Punk to walk away from the payday that he did, but he did. I wouldn't consider signing him until I knew his head was right. CM Punk needs to go out and do his own thing and find his comfort zone, more or less, but it's not something I would do on a whim because it's obvious CM Punk doesn't want to be in wrestling right now. Backstage news on Vince McMahon's brass ring comments on the Austin podcast. While no one will say this publicly, privately, there are several WWE talents who believes Vince McMahon's comments on Steve Austin's podcast about grabbing the brass ring were a joke. It's no secret that Vince is the one who controls WWE's talents and are used and won't blame himself for WWE's issues. But they also realize they can't make more money anywhere else, so they're stuck. And it all reverts back to the wrestling monopoly, Vince McMahon. We could have all bought WCW and ECW. It could have been yours. You could have beat Ted Turner still. Keep the old management and still make it look like a rivalry. You'd be amazed the fans and the wrestling roster you'd still have. As I've stated in several shows, my biggest qualm with that is that they took if you look at it, essentially, two entire rosters, the WCW and ECW locker room, and within a year of acquiring the company, hell, that's being generous, 6 months to a year, dwindled it down to what you see today. Hell, it's pretty bad when Spike Dudley doesn't work there anymore. Cena nominated for an award, Slammy Awards Raw rating. The final rating for Monday's WWE Raw with the Slammy Awards was a 2.66. This is down from last week's 2.79. As noted, Monday's Raw drew 3.706 million viewers, down from last week's 3.88 million viewers. WWE Network will begin adding episodes of Primetime Wrestling this weekend. An episode from April 28th, 1986 will air 8 p.m. Eastern on Friday night. It features Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan with Jake Roberts, The Iron Sheik, and more. John Cena has been nominated for DoSomething.org's annual Celebrity Gone Good Award. Cena was nominated for his role as Grand Marshal for the 2014 Susan G. Komen Global Race for a Cure, and his work with the Make-A-Wish. Voting ends on December 24th at 11:59 p.m. and fans can vote once a day. Winners will be announced on December 29th. WWE star responds to Vince McMahon's comments, wants to be, quote, freed from his cage. Hey, it's Alex Riley. Alex Riley has been tweeting hashtags Free Riley and retweeting comments from fans about how WWE and Vince McMahon should push Riley. Here is more or less what he said. Don't crack the door open for an Alex Riley. I will not hesitate to kick that bitch open. Hashtag brass ring. Chris Jericho's possible feud with Daniel Bryan, CM Punk's wrestling future, and Best Boss. Chris Jericho recently talked with Wrestling 101, the full interview available at WrestlingInc.com, but here are some of the highlights. Do you think that CM Punk will ever return to wrestling with WWE or another company? That's something you have to ask CM Punk. I haven't spoken to him about it. I do know in 2005, I was very burned out from wrestling and left for 2.5 years. If Punk does come back, it might take a while because when you're burned out, you're done. Like I said, it took me 2.5 years before I decided I wanted to come back. A lot of people forget that I left for quite a long period of time. It is a tough life. There is a lot of pressure and a lot of politics. You go through a lot of shit. If you're not there 100%, it can really drag you down, that's for sure. When asked, have you got anyone in mind you would like to work with during your next run in the WWE? When the time comes for me to come back, if I have some time and they're willing to have me back, I will look through the roster and see what works and what makes sense. Seth Rollins is great. Dean Ambrose is great. I think Daniel Bryan as a babyface versus myself as a heel would tear the house down. There are a lot of great guys, but it all depends on what they've got going on and what I've got going on. The last thing they are going to be doing is waiting around for Chris Jericho to come back. So when the time comes, we will see what is going on and who is doing what with who and make some decisions from there. How would you compare your three bosses, Paul Heyman, Eric Bischoff, and Vince McMahon? This should be good. Vince is the best boss I've ever had. The other guys were good bosses, but to me, they were just small-time independent guys as far as companies they had. Being in ECW and WCW for me was all about getting into WWE, and I didn't really care about anything else. Vince is the best boss I've ever had in the business, and I wouldn't work for anyone else but him, and I haven't for the last few years. Former WCW, WWF wrestler talks about issues with Vince, Ric Flair, and the Undertaker gimmick. Blackheart, who worked in a host organization during wrestling's territory days and beyond, including NWA, WCCW, WCW, and WWF, recently joined the host of In Your Head Wrestling Radio to discuss his career as a professional wrestler. Regarding the short stint he wrestled with WWF in 1989, Bart shared that he had originally been offered a shot at WWF years before and turned it down. He, referring to Vince, hired me up there for a punishment to show me how much money I could have made if I would have come up there when he wanted me to. Bart recalled that WWF had originally wanted him to work as part of a new Long Rider stable, which included Ron Bass and J.J. Dillon, but he wasn't interested in working for the company at that time. I pretty much told them no because I've been with WCW for over 20 years and I was making excellent money. And I knew Jim Crockett and Ted Turner, and I stayed with them. Bart later said that Vince McMahon later told him that he had come to WWF, that if he had come to WWF when Vince had, later told him that he had come to WWF, if he had come to WWF when Vince originally called him up, he'd be working for WWE as a road agent today and pulling in $1.5 to $2 million a year. Instead, he ended up working around 13 to 14 months as an enhancement talent for the company. Vince McMahon did not like me because I did not jump at the idea of a 3-day tryout. He explained, I was told to come up there for a 3-day tryout, and I've been in the business for over 20 years and made a name everywhere. I went and held almost every belt there was to offer. When discussing his time with WCW, Black Bart suggested that Ric Flair was personally involved in a backstage situation that prevented Bart from getting a shot at the big gold belt. The only reason they wouldn't give me the title is because when I was the national champion, I should have been next in line for the world strap, but I made a mistake and told Dusty Rhodes if I ever got Ric Flair in the ring, I would you-know-what. Bart explained that he and Flair had been friends until Bart worked a popular angle with Deadeye Dick and Dutch Mantell that received a decent amount of television time. Flair went to Ted Turner and said, you give them 3 jabronis all the TV time and give your world champion none. Well, anybody that was watching TBS back at that time, the world champion got anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes every Saturday. Every Saturday. Bart said after that conversation took place, their contracts were tore up and they were eventually weeded out of WCW. Later in the interview, Black Bart said that he was originally offered the Undertaker gimmick by Dusty Rhodes when Rhodes has originally come up with it, and that he had accepted Dusty's offer but was released before the chance to work as the character. TNA headed to Netflix. What? And a TNA ad airs during Monday Night Raw. Promoting their January 19th show, there was an ad on Monday Night Raw, so either Dixie's trying to push some buttons or Destination America or both. The Skinny, full story available in the Variety article and at WrestlingInc.com. TNA President Dixie Carter talks about British Boot Camp 2 and why she picked Mark Andrews as the winner of the series. Dixie also talked about the upcoming UK tour, all the shows being Impact Wrestling tapings. The company will also be taping a documentary that will air in the UK that will follow British Boot Camp 2 contestants on the tour. Quote, we want to deal with them, said Discovery Chief Executive David Zaslav, said at the UBS Investor Conference, quote, they want to deal with us, it's a question of value. Well, Destination America, Discovery Channel, you're going to find that the longer Dixie Carter run things, the less value that product will have. But you heard it here first, and I don't try to be right. Ask my buddy Nathan Lerner, who's a fan of the show. I don't talk to hear myself talk. Wrestling does not have to overcomplicate itself, and Dixie Carter overcomplicates this business. Moving on. Steve Austin talks about Punk signing with UFC, bridging the gap between Punk and McMahon. The past 2 weeks by far have been the biggest in wrestling podcast history. And Stone Cold Steve Austin wrapped that period by posting his recent Vince McMahon interview on Podcast One. This wasn't exactly a straight port of his WWE Network interview with McMahon, though. As Austin shared his thoughts about CM Punk joining UFC, Austin's thoughts ran shortly before the interview with McMahon. Quote, "I think he rolls with some guys, and it's a very big passion of his. I wish him all the luck in the world, and I know he'll do them a hell of a big buy rate." Austin said of the fellow former WWE champion making the move to the octagon, match him up someone at his skill level. It's hard to gauge what his skill level is, though, Austin said about ideas for a potential first opponent. Austin had hoped that WWE and Punk would work together, saying WWE needed someone to play the role that Jim Ross played in his return to WWE. An arbitrator, more or less, and that's where the whole brass ring comments came in, because he claims McMahon had the balls to claim there's nobody like that anymore. Well, when you're trying to create the superstars of tomorrow, because as we've talked, people like Cena and Bryan, any wrestler can get injured. It's kind of hard to say further your career, but also play Jerry Springer in the locker room. Quote, "I talked about maybe bridging the gap with Punk and Vince, and then he goes and does the deal with UFC. It would appear to me that they're way further apart than I thought they were. I knew things were bad, and I hadn't talked to CM Punk, so it's going to be interesting." More backstage news on AJ Lee possibly leaving, and this will wrap up today's show, and I'll go back on my Dixie Carter kick for, 5 minutes. There are people within WWE who believe AJ Lee is leaving the company after Sunday's TLC pay-per-view. It has not been confirmed that she is leaving, but it is being talked about backstage. There was some online speculation after Raw that AJ's acceptance speech for Diva of the Year Slammy Award was her way of saying goodbye. It's possible that the speech really became her farewell if the speculation on her departure turns out to be true. Here's the poll we'll put up for today. You can comment at youtube.com/CWE Company or facebook.com/WrestleTalkShow, facebook.com/CWE Company, Twitter at CWE Company. Do you think Destination America can turn the ratings and popularity of TNA around? I personally don't think so, as long as you have someone who takes it from the pinnacle that it was at to what it isn't today. I think the first thing you need to do, like Janice Carter tried to do a couple years ago, is look at the money, audit the company, and just look at what she's managed to do. They used to make their own champions, and now they're just worried about competing and holding on for dear life. So how long do you think TNA's relationship with Discovery/Destination America will last? Share your thoughts anywhere and everywhere. For Wrestling Today and Wrestle Talk Show, I'm your host Joshua Zimmerman saying have a great morning.